Hi, in this video we are going to look at the real reason for suffering as human beings. And I'm also going to show you how you can transcend suffering. Now, you may need to work on this transcendence, but I'm going to give you definite pointers as to how transcendence of human suffering is achieved. Because as always, once we understand the question or the problem, and we really look at it, we see the innate and therein lying answer to the problem or to the question. So I want to start by saying that many, maybe spiritual teachers and many texts maybe you have read or a lot of statements that you have heard might have suggested that the cause for human suffering lies in our desire. So if we have desires and they're not met, then we might suffer. Or that is a definite recipe for suffering. And we all probably know this, right? An aspect to desire can absolutely be if it's not getting fulfilled, if we're not getting what we want, or if a desire stays a desire and never gets satisfied as such or fulfilled, suffering can arise. Yes, that is true. But that's not the cause for suffering, because on the contrary, desire is necessary for us to actually create and live in it within our higher state, our higher vibration, because the higher vibration is fueled by our passion, by our desires, by our excitement. Because if you have no excitement for anything, what is actually moving you forward? If you have no desire, what is moving you forward? And this can be quite a tricky one, I have to say as well, in my experience, because the more you realize who you truly are, and the more you feel like, I want to embody unconditional love here on the planet and joy and raise people up to this, or not even raise people up to this, but the more I realize this is who and what I am, the less desires are important. Like, desire then becomes something that you choose because you know it is part of this illusion. It's part of this illusionary process. And also because we want to take then the ego's desire out of the picture and really sort out what it is we truly want. And what it is we truly want, we don't actually need to do much, because we actually just need to be ourselves. It's about the state of being. So desires often have to do with something, acquiring something or experiencing something that is not here yet, right? But in your state of just beingness, of your true self, you don't have that. And that's okay too. But we're actually here in a 3D world. And so even when we realize who we truly are, we still get to actually, on this plane, work with our passions, our positive emotions, our desires, our intentions, right? Because that's how we create then. And we are creators. So the answer is not then to move away from desires, because that way everything just becomes stagnant. Even though we realize we're just choosing the desires as a means to create, and it's not really that important, it's not who we are, and it's not what we must have, but it's something that we feel like, it's something I would like to manifest, just because I am a creator being, not because there is a need for it. There's never a need for anything. Need can only arise from lack. And that gets us to the real reason for suffering. The real reason for human suffering is the belief that the ego has, the identified self has, the limited self has, the belief that lack exists. The belief in lack and the belief in separation from the thing we want, separation from source, separation from each other, separation from our true self, separation from worthiness. That is the real cause of human suffering. Because if you desire something, knowing it's on its way, knowing it's part of your creative force, And then it's actually, it can be liberating, it can be delightful. So it doesn't have to cause suffering. Even if it never manifests, it does not have to cause suffering. If you believe, though, that you don't have it yet, you really need it, you absolutely want it. If you don't have it or don't manifest it, if you don't get it or experience it, you will be unhappy. You will not be fulfilled as when you do actually achieve that. That is what causes the suffering. That's what causes the suffering, because it's a belief in an illusion. Everything that is separating, everything that is lacking is never true, because the source of everything is fully abundant. Like, it's unlimited abundance. There cannot be any lack. In our human experience, in our limitations, yes, we do experience lack. But if we give this credibility and pretend, and I'm saying deliberately pretend, or choose to believe that lack is real, then we will experience suffering. So whenever we are in our ego state, in our self-identified state, saying, this is me and I don't have that, or I can't manifest that, or I want and long for that and it's missing, then I suffer. I want health, I don't have health. And so me as this human being, as this persona, I don't have this, and so I'm suffering. If I'm in my true state of, I'm part of the everything abundance, like all abundance, there is never any lack. And I get to realize that again. All is here now. I get to tune into it. I get to have different experiences, but all is here now already. And my perception and my perspective will determine how I see my world right now. My own filters will determine how I see the world. And I choose to have less and less ego filters and more see the true world, the true self, the truth of everything, which is limitless abundance. For example, there cannot be any lack. There cannot be any lack in the universe, in Source. And because Source is everything, everything is made of Source, there cannot be any lack. So we then get to, when we look at the suffering bit, we get to actually analyze and evaluate our own thoughts as to what we believe is real and what's not real. And that comes back to our conditionings, to how we were brought up, how we were programmed, and how we programmed ourselves by interpreting the world and our experiences throughout our lifetime. But we get to question that again. We get to come back to the I am state, which is not identified with anything. And in being this non-identified, unlimited, let's say blissful energy, if you want to put it that way, even though that's already something, but just to call it that, in that there can never be any suffering. So instead of trying not to have any desires and being content with what you have and playing small, let's say, in order to not suffer, not wanting certain things, I want to suggest to you, you should desire, you should want, but see if it comes from a place of true beingness. I deserve this. I am this already. I have this already. It's already existent, whether I see it or not, but in my world, it already exists. Or whether you come from a place of, I'm lacking this, I need this, I must have this. I will not be happy without this. Then you suffer. If you create, if you produce desire from your soul state, it will enhance your life. It will enhance your path. Because the energy and the vibration of passion is what brings you to the highest possible outcome, to the highest possible timeline. You need to be invested in that. In this third dimension, we will see what it's like after. But this is actually needed. that's needed. So don't stifle your desires. Give yourself permission to wish and want things, to have intentions, and move forward with your intentions. Actually honor them, treasure them, value them. They're not what creates your suffering. And for example, you might say, but what if my suffering is created by the suffering of others? By me seeing animals suffer, or children suffer, or humans suffer, or the planet suffer. This is causing suffering for me. Then that's a wonderful question, should you have that. That means that you are able to be compassionate. You feel empathy, you feel compassion for the other self. But then again, you get to choose how to best serve in this situation. Let's say you observe the planet suffering, or someone else. Someone else is in pain, someone else is sick, maybe a family member, and you suffer with them first. Okay? You feel your compassion for them, and you honor yourself for actually feeling this, because it means you feel the connection. And then you have this desire to maybe help them, make it better. You want for them to be healthy again. You want the best for them. So, but then instead of entering their state of suffering, they might be really suffering as well because they cannot see beyond what's going on right now. But you can ask yourself then, how do I contribute best to limiting the suffering of that person? Now, first is acknowledge that everyone gets to choose their suffering in this life. There's nothing wrong with suffering. Eventually, suffering will not be needed anymore for our development, right? And I think already suffering would not be needed. As of right now, suffering is not needed in the world anymore. And that's what I advocate for strongly. For our growth and development and expansion, suffering is not needed. Contrast and duality is fine, but suffering itself as such is not needed, in my perception. But then, so that's number one. So everyone gets to choose their level of suffering in this world, and some still choose suffering, even though it's on a subconscious level or on a higher consciousness level, they still choose the suffering to facilitate their growth. Right? So we do not know the spiritual path of the others. So if they chose suffering, they may say, never, ever, ever would I have chosen this. And yes, from a human perspective, they're absolutely right. But from a higher perspective, they might have chosen this. But they have, of course, forgotten it due to the veil of forgetting. So don't assume you know what the other person needs. But then, obviously, if you feel like there's something you can do or want to do to make it easier for the other person, see, does my suffering in that situation, like to suffer with them, help them actually? Or does it just increase the suffering in the world and the suffering energy? And yes, the second one is the case. So then you get to choose a better way of serving. So if me suffering also, because the other one person is suffering, is not helping, what is helping? Number one, I'm helping by acknowledging everyone is at the right place at the right time. Number two, I get to maybe assist them. Maybe it's physically. I get to serve them maybe energetically, sending them helpful thoughts and vibes each day. Right? Uplifting energies each day. Or I get to actually do that while I speak with them. Get to uplift them. Or in whatever way. But we will realize that we cannot solve human suffering by adding to suffering, by us becoming sufferers ourselves. That does not solve the suffering. But by us then raising the vibration and the frequency, and transcending the suffering, realizing there is no lack here. Like even if there is an absence of health right now being experienced, the experience itself is complete. And then we get to choose, how do we deal with this experience? Do we deal with this experience from the ego beliefs in lack, limitation, and separation from good, separation from health? Or do we not believe the ego and instead create from the soul's perspective? And that way all suffering will be eliminated. It does not mean that we don't have challenges. And that's also something, everyone, I want you to hear this. In that state of consciousness, let's say 5D state of consciousness, where you are in unity, you are in unity consciousness, in oneness consciousness, you know that you're all one, you're connected to everything and everyone, and you are in the love vibration and compassion consciousness, you still experience challenges. Like, ask anyone who is in 5D consciousness right now, do you still have challenges? Do you still have contrast? They will all say yes. Ask them, do you suffer? They will probably say no. Because the first question I ask myself is, what is the lesson in this? What is it that I'm not seeing? What is it that I still maybe subconsciously believe that is not true? Because once I'm in my true state, I don't suffer. I follow the trail of what's the lesson in this? What can I learn? How can I expand through this? What can this teach me? The challenge or the difficulty or the problem. And life is here to be solved all the time, in a way. If you look at what life is, it's one situation after another. It's one day after another where different things come up and present themselves. So this means if that's what life is, and this must be perfect, then I get to play with this. There's nothing wrong with it. But this must be then the task. The task is to understand this. What is presenting itself to me? How am I contributing to it? How do I want to contribute to it? And then intentionally create this more and more. And in that, no suffering needed. Yes, there will be loss. Yes, there will be pain. Yes, there will be confusion. Yes, there will be maybe even conflict. Could be. But nothing comparable or nothing, it's nothing compared with the degree of suffering that you have when you're unaware, unconscious, in your ego state of being, in your little self state of being, believing in lack and believing in separation. These beliefs, once they are gone, the suffering is gone. And you can embrace all the contrast and embrace all the challenges without having to fear the next challenge, the next problem, the next downer, the next difficulty, the next terrible person. You will not even think about that anymore because you see everything as the perfection that it is. I hope that this was helpful. And I'm going to bless you. I'm going to love you and leave you for today. And we'll talk again next time, if you want to.